I was on my way to get married when a truck slammed into my car from behind. After being unconscious for what felt like forever, I woke to the sound of a doctor telling my fiancé that I might lose my memory. Deciding to have a little fun, I opened my eyes and pretended to be confused. "Who are you?" I asked. My fiancé went completely still. I was about to tell her I was only teasing, but before I could, she grabbed my best man's hand without hesitation. "I'm Janice Lowe, your best friend's fiancé," she said softly. "You got into a car accident on your way to our wedding." My smile froze. My gaze drifted from Janice to my best friend, Logan Quayle, whose fingers were laced with hers. He pulled her close, barely able to contain his excitement. "Josh, you really don't remember us. We were supposed to get married yesterday, but your accident delayed everything." A cold shiver ran through me. What had started as a spur-of-the-moment joke had turned into an unexpected nightmare. I forced a stiff smile. "I don't remember that you two were supposed to get married." A tiny spark of hope flickered inside me. Maybe they were messing with me. But then Logan held out his hand. The blue diamond on his ring caught the light, stabbing into my eyes like ice. "You lost your memory," he said with a grin. "Of course you wouldn't remember when I proposed to Jan. You were the one who handed me the ring." His words were half truth, half lie. I had been the one who proposed to Janice, and he'd handed me the ring. Now, the ring that should have been mine glittered mockingly on his finger. "You two look like you've been together forever," I blurted, unable to hide my disbelief. Logan glanced at Janice, then intertwined their fingers. "We've been together for 7 years. Now we're finally about to get married." Janice cleared her throat to hide her discomfort. 7 years. Janice and I had also been together for 7 years, seeing each other almost every day. Yet somehow, I'd never realized I'd been sharing my partner with someone else. The air grew thick until a knock at the door broke the silence. Janice turned, clearly relieved. A woman stood at the doorway, graceful, striking, and all too familiar. Serena Jarrett, Janice's closest friend. My relentless nemesis. She'd always glared at me with cold disdain, especially after learning I was with Janice. Yet now, beneath her frost, I caught a flicker of concern. Before I could make sense of it, Janice spoke first. "Josh, this is your girlfriend of 5 years, Serena Jarrett." My entire body went rigid, goosebumps crawled over my skin. Apparently, one lie wasn't enough for Janice. She needed to stack them. My girlfriend of 5 years. That was absurd. I drew a breath, ready to speak, but Serena cut in with a calm, almost playful smile. "You've forgotten your own girlfriend?" she murmured. My jaw dropped. I couldn't form a single word. Janice caught my stunned expression, winked at Serena, and left with Logan. Serena approached me slowly, brushing her fingers over the bandage on my head. "Come on," she said softly. "Let's get you home to rest." She led me to a spacious apartment downtown. Warm colors, but minimal furnishings. It didn't look lived in. She opened a closet, revealing brand new slippers and loungewear. Tag still attached. Feigning confusion, I said, "Janice told me we've been together for years. Why is everything new?" Serena didn't flinch. "This is the home we picked for after the wedding. It's your first time here." I stayed silent. She guided me toward the bedroom. "You're still healing. Rest for now. Tell me if you're hungry." "I'm not," I muttered. A shadow of disappointment crossed her face. I didn't understand why. Serena tucked me in gently, brushed her forehead against mine, and said she had some work to handle. 10 minutes after she left, I crept toward the study. The door wasn't fully closed. Through the crack, I caught her voice on the phone. "Serena, please," Janice begged, "for the sake of our friendship, just look after Josh for a while. I know I messed up, but Logan and I have been together so long. He just wants a wedding." "Janice," Serena's tone was sharp. "Once Josh regains his memory, he'll leave you." "No way," Janice snapped. "Everyone knows he only loves me. The wedding with Logan is just for show. Josh will understand. I love him too, and I will marry him." Serena's dry laugh ended the call. I gripped the doorknob tightly, pain radiating through my chest. The woman I'd loved had played me like I was disposable. Then I heard Serena again. "I've sent you the recording. Find out how the car accident happened. I want answers by this afternoon." I froze. Moments later, the study door opened. Serena looked as composed as ever. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. Perfect timing. The food I ordered just arrived. She set the takeout on the table. The smell hit me. My favorite comfort food. Janice hated these dishes. She always chose heavy, spicy meals. Yet here was someone who knew exactly what I liked. Serena smiled faintly. "I remember. I can even cook your favorites. Next time, I'll make them myself." Her tone was casual, but her eyes betrayed something deeper. After we ate, she led me back to the bedroom. "Rest," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "The more you sleep, the faster you'll heal." When her breathing finally steadied beside me, I slipped out and opened her computer. Only one chat window was open. A file arrived, photos of Janice and Logan spanning their secret 7-year relationship. And then, one report stopped my breath. They'd bribed a truck driver to hit my car. Not to kill me, just to hospitalize me long enough for them to marry quietly. By pretending to have memory loss, I had walked straight into their trap. A faint fragrance wafted behind me. "You saw everything," Serena said. I turned slowly. "You knew I didn't lose my memory." She chuckled. "I suspected. So, what now?" Her sharp gaze pinned me in place. "Are you into me this time?" I asked quietly. Her cheeks flushed crimson. "So what if I am?" "You treated Janice like she was a treasure. I told you she wasn't worth it, but you didn't believe me. You even accused me of having ulterior motives." The posed, elegant Serena vanished. In her place was a woman trembling with years of suppressed emotion. Only now did I realize she'd loved me all along. "Serena," I whispered, my chest tightening. "Will you marry me?" She blinked, stunned. "W what?" Her hands fumbled with a drawer, pulling out a small box. Inside were 2 rings. Her fingers shook as she slid one onto my hand. "You can't back out," she murmured, flustered but resolute. I laughed softly and placed the other ring on her finger. I won't. Just then, her phone rang. Janice's voice filled the room. Serena, how's Josh? I'll be marrying Logan in 3 days. Don't forget, you're my bridesmaid. Serena glanced at me. I kept my face blank, my hand firm around hers. What a coincidence, Serena said sweetly. My wedding's in 3 days too. Janice paused. I didn't know you had a boyfriend. Oh, I do. Serena replied. Didn't you say Josh and I have been together 5 years? Yes, it's finally official. Janice laughed awkwardly. Then we can have our weddings together. Just don't let Josh know. It might trigger his memories. Serena ended the call with a faint smirk. 3 days. I'm used. That's barely enough time to plan. I've been ready for years, she said softly. And she meant it. Every detail was already prepared. Watching her move around the room, my chest tightened again, not with grief this time, but with something dangerously close to hope. 3 days later, I stood face to face with Logan at the wedding venue. He gave me a smug pat on the shoulder. Good to see you, Josh. Try not to make a scene. Okay, I smiled faintly but said nothing. When the brides appeared, Janice on one side, radiant and false, Serena on the other, graceful and real, I finally understood what peace felt like. As the officiant began the ceremony, the guests clapped, the music swelled, and then a voice screamed from the crowd. Josh, what are you doing up there? Heads turned. The violins faltered. I recognized the voice before I found the face. Mrs. Loy, Janice's mother, stood at the back of the aisle, one hand clutching her pearls, the other pointing at me, as if I'd crawled up from the wrong grave. Logan's smirk sharpened. Janice's smile, flawless and bright beneath her veil, trembled at the edges like an overstretched ribbon. Serena's fingers slid into mine. The warmth steadied me. The officiant cleared his throat, attempting a professional smile. Two weddings sharing one venue, he said, voice wobbling. A beautiful coincidence, I'm sure. If we could proceed. Mrs. Loy's voice rose an octave. He is Janice's fiancé. Gasps rippled, eager as dry leaves catching wind. Foams lifted. The room became a lens. Logan took a single step closer to me, posture loose, eyes predatory. Relax, Mrs. Loy, he said. All charm and smooth edges. Josh is here as a witness. Old friends and all that. I said nothing. The less I fed him, the hungrier he'd look. Janice's bouquet trembled. Josh, she said, her voice a careful whisper that the microphone made sound intimate. Why don't you take a seat? Today's not about you. It was the exact tone she used to order sparkling water for a table. Pleasant, practiced, essentially hostile. Sonia's thumb traced a small circle on the inside of my wrist. The officiant hurried along. Very well, brides, grooms, if you will. We'll begin with a brief welcome and then, a chime rang through the hall. Every head pivoted to the big LED screen above us. It came alive with a soft glitch, bolts of cyan racing across black. The venue technician looked at his console, startled. He hadn't touched anything. Then the first photograph appeared. Janice and Logan at a dim restaurant 7 years ago, fingers intertwined. One candle, to shadows. A second photo, Logan's apartment balcony at dawn. Janice wearing his shirt, laughing into his neck. A third, hotel lobby. Small town courthouse steps. A beach at midnight. Time-stamped, geotagged, layered with years. The audience stilled. Janice's bouquet slid down, a petal breaking free and falling like an exhausted butterfly. Logan's smirk went marble cold. Turn it off, he snapped, looking toward the booth. The technician lifted both hands. It's not me. Sonia exhaled, slow and quiet. It's me, she said softly, not into the microphone, and yet the words seemed to hum through me. The screen blurred, then resolved into a transcript. Messages between two numbers, Logan's and a contact labeled drive. The text bubbles were bright as sirens. DR. You get me the plate number and the route. I'll make it look like a nudge. Not fatal. WQ. Timing is key. He needs to be out for at least 48 hours. TR. Consider it done. A murmur spread, thick and frightened. Someone swore under their breath. Someone else whispered, oh my god. Janice turned to Logan. Her lipstick looked too sharp on her blanched face. What is this? Logan's smile did not reach his eyes. It's fake. The screen flickered again. A video now. A man in a fluorescent vest sat in a narrow room that looked like a break trailer. He stared into the camera, cheek twitching, guilt lodged like a stone in his throat. My name is Daniel Reyes, he said. I'm the driver. I was paid to hit a silver sedan on Crane Boulevard. Just enough to put the guy in the hospital. He swallowed. They told me it was a prank gone too far, that the guy would be fine. The cash was in my locker after my shift. He slid a phone across the table. I kept the messages, in case it ever turned into something worse. 3 messages popped onto the screen. Ryan damning. The last one was time-stamped the morning of my accident. WQ. Wait until he's within 2 blocks of the florist. TR. Copy. WQ. Don't mess it up. The venue seemed to lean, the weight of 100 stairs tilting toward Logan. The air smelled like roses and static. He laughed, a single hard bark. Cute. Seriously. Deepfakes are improving. The hall doors opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped inside, with a woman in a slate blazer. They walked without hurry, but each step set off a tiny chain reaction of whispers. Detective Grant. The woman introduced herself into a handheld mic that someone, Serena, placed neatly in her palm. City Bureau of Investigations. We have a warrant to collect Mr. Quayle's phone and to speak with Ms. Loy. There was a hit-and-run reported 3 days ago. The victim was Mr. Josh Hale. I had not told my parents anything. I had not told my former teammates from university, or the bartender who had my usual. Yet here I was, being narrated by a stranger who carried law on the set of her shoulders. Logan went very still. Janice looked at me, as if she had just realized I was not a mirror. Logan, she whispered. He gave her a look that was either apology or annoyance. We had both seen it too many times to tell the difference now. Detective, he said smoothly, handing over his phone with the theatrics of a reluctant saint. Anything to help clear this up quickly. We were just about to exchange VAS. Keep going. Someone yelled from a table near the back. This is better than vows. Nervous laughter scattered like cones. Enough, the venue manager hissed, but the case had slipped from his hands and tumbled into ours. Sonia turned. And only then did I notice the tiny body camera nested against the delicate lace edging of her dress. A single blue light winked under a strip of satin. She slid her fingers out of mine and stepped forward. Gaze steady, calm as a compass. Detective, she said. You should also collect Ms. Lowe's phone and her email drafts. The planning didn't start or end with the accident. Janice exhaled a shredded sound. Sonia, she said, in the voice we used to use over coffee in college when exams came to fast and sleep to slow. Please. It was the please that did it. The old intimacy. Pulled like a hidden knife. Sonia didn't flinch. You had 7 years to tell him the truth, she said. You had 3 days to call off the farce. You had 100 moments between those two numbers when you could have chosen anything else. Janice's eyes glossed with furious wetness. I was going to choose him, she spit, nodding toward me. This was a show, that's all. I told you that. Logan wanted a wedding. There were investors. There were optics. It was a deal. And then I would have fixed it. Fixed it, I asked, finally finding my voice. By what? Filing for an annulment at brunch. She looked at me like I had betrayed her by learning to read. Josh, she said, throwing all the softness she had left into my name. You love me. It was not a question. It never had been. I thought of the photos on the screen. I thought of a ring that had once felt like a promise of era and now felt like an anchor I had pulled from my own lungs. I thought of Sonia carefully ordering soup instead of saying, I know you haven't eaten in 12 hours. I know your stomach is a knot. I know you are too proud to say you're hungry. No, I said. It dropped into the hall without ceremony. Janice blinked. For an instant she looked young and lost. No strategy, no script. Then anger found her. It was almost a relief to see something honest. How long have you been planning this? She demanded of Sonia. How long have you been collecting? What? Evidence, you little. Long enough, Sonia said. Long enough to be the friend you needed when you needed one. And long enough to stop being your alibi when the cost was someone else's life. Detective Grant gestured, and one of the suits, an officer, stepped toward Janice with a small evidence bag. Your phone, Ms. Lloyd. Janice pulled it from her bouquet like a thorn and handed it over with fingers that shook despite how fiercely they gripped. This is insane, she said. You can't just ... This is my wedding. From the other side of the aisle, Logan's father stood, red creeping up his neck. There are investors here, he said, each word a clenched fist. Do you understand what kind of collateral damage you're inviting? Detective Grant didn't even turn. I understand the law. The screen flashed again. For a heartbeat, the hall saw itself. To brides, to grooms, 1,000 eyes, before the image shifted to the grainy footage of my car crumpling forward at the exact spot where Crane Boulevard jogged before the florist. The room fell silent. Under the engine whine and the sickening crunch, you could hear my voice, odd and distant, as if someone else were narrating my life. It hurts. It actually hurts. I looked at the floor. Sonia stepped back to me, and when her hand found mine again, I could breathe. The music stuttered and died. The florist's arrangement wilted in the brightness of the screen. Time stretched, then snapped. Enough, Logan said again, but softer now, as if the word had to crawl across broken glass to escape him. We are not doing this here. On the contrary, the efficient interjected, was suddenly warm with nerve-sterned annoyance. We are definitely doing something here. Whether it's vows or statements is up to all of you. Laughter, thin, cracked, fluttered in the rafters. Sonia raised her chin. We'll do both. She looked at me. The world narrowed to the inches between us and then expanded to hold everything. The cruelty and the kindness, the betrayals and the beginnings. Josh, she said, I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here because truth is a kind of vow, too. She turned to the efficient. If you would. He blinked. Then, as if this was the strangest but also the most inevitable job he'd ever had, he lifted his book. Very well. He cleared his throat. We will proceed with Ceremony B. Sonia Jarrett and Josh Hale. A hush moved like a tie. This was happening, not as a rescue from pain, but as a declaration that pain would not write the last line. Vows, the efficient prompted gently. Do we have vows? Sonia nodded, and when she spoke, her voice held steady. I don't promise that life will never hit us from behind, she said. I promise that when it does, I will not make a spectacle of your brokenness. I will not use your most vulnerable moments to accessorize my needs. I will hold the wheel when you can't, and when you can, I will not yank it from your hands. Her fingers tightened around mine. I promise to notice how you like your food when you've had 12-hour days. I promise to show you the message instead of telling you the gossip. I promise to be the question when you forget there's more than one answer. She took a breath. I promise to love you quietly, and the world is loud, and loudly, and the world tells me to be quiet. Silence pressed, tender and complete. The efficient looked at me. My vow was a long road in my chest, and I decided not to skip a single turn. I don't promise that I'll never misjudge, I said. I promise that when I do, I will apologize like it matters, because you do. I swallowed, keeping my voice low, letting the mic do the work. I promise to choose you, not because choosing feels like triumph, but because it feels like truth. I promise to value your warnings as much as your warmth. I promise to fight for myself in the places I used to abandon myself, and to invite you into those places instead of building pretty lies over them. I traced the line of her ring with my thumb. I promise not to perform being fine with you. I'll be honest, even when honest is messy. A sound escaped from somewhere close. The small, involuntary sound people make when they watch something fragile happen and realize it didn't break. The efficient smiled at us like we'd let him inside a secret. Rings. Serena lifted my hand. The ring she'd slid onto my finger days ago. Trembling, determined, caught a whisper of light. I lifted hers and slid the twin band home. It fit like a decision that had been waiting for its moment. By the authority vested in me by the state, the efficient said, Voice clear now. Firm. I pronounce you husband and wife. You may ... He glanced at the chaos beyond us. The police, the journalists, the floral disasters, the brutal pry. Begin. I kissed her. The world did not end. It simply realign. Applause erupted. Part joy, part shock, part relief that something had completed its arc today. On the other side, Jonna stood motionless, her veil casting lace shadows over a face that had run out of places to hide. Logan dropped his gaze first. It was such a small surrender that if you didn't know him, you'd miss it. I had once known him like the inside of my own palm. Detective Grant stepped forward. Mr. Quayle, she said, business reasserting itself. You'll come with us now. Ms. Loy, a statement would be in your best interest. Logan lifted his hands, clapping them once as if to summon a better script from thin air. Everyone calm down, he said, strolling toward the aisle. This is ridiculous. Janice, sweetheart, get your... Janice shrank away from his reach. For the first time in the entirety of our entanglement, she wasn't performing for anyone. Did you bribe the driver? She asked, voice small. Logan, tell me you didn't. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For a second, something like regret passed through him. Then he smoothed it away. I protected our future by breaking someone's spine. Sonia asked, conversational and lethal. It's just bruises, Logan said quickly, flicking his eyes to me as if willing me to confirm. I met his gaze levelly. It's a scar that will outlast your memory of why you ordered it. His jaw ticked. Mr. Quayle, the officer repeated. This time it was not a request. The click of cuffs sounded like punctuation at the end of a chapter that had already gone on too long. Logan swallowed a retort, straightened his cuffs as if they were platinum, and walked with the officers down the aisle. He didn't look back at Janice. He didn't look at me. Mrs. Loy sat down hard, as if someone had pulled her strings. Her husband took her hand with the detached competence of a man who has steered one too many crises into a private parlor and called it family. Janice lifted her chin. I didn't know, she said to nobody and everybody. I didn't know he... Her voice crumpled. I just wanted, what? A show, a ring, a way to had everything without letting go of anything. The photographer kept taking pictures. It was his job, but also habit. When things fall apart, people document the dust. Sonia tugged my hand. Come on, she whispered. Let's give them back their air. We slipped into a side corridor lined with framed photos of couples who looked like they had invented happiness. Sonia leaned her back against the wall and laughed once, shaky and soft. You okay? I asked. She nodded, then shook her head, then nodded again. I rehearsed what I'd say to her for 7 years, she admitted. Not once in any version did I imagine saying it. In a wedding dress, I cupped her face. You said enough. And you said it beautifully. Her eyes warmed. You didn't retaliate, she said. After a beat, you revealed. There's a difference. I'm proud of you. The door at the far end of the corridor opened. Detective Grant appeared, looking like the kind of tired that comes from holding a line for strangers. Your statement can wait, she said, glancing down the hall toward the nose. We've got what we need for now. I'm sorry your day was hijacked. It was reclaimed, Sonia said. Grant's mouth tipped, just slightly. I like that. She hesitated, then added. Reyes, the driver. He's cooperating. He didn't intend the severity of the crash. He'll probably see leniency. I nodded. It would never be a clean ledger, but small balances mattered. Thank you. She left us with a cart and the kind of nod people use when words would dull their respect. We stood there, husband and wife in a corridor that smelled like wax and new paint. The adrenaline ebbed. The ache arrived where it always does. Not to conquer but to mark. Do you want to go back in? Sonia asked. We could cut the cake as quickly as a hostage negotiation and then run. I smiled. Tempting, but there's something I need to finish. We returned to the hall. The room had shifted into a strange after-party of investigation and gossip. Half the guests had migrated toward the doors, speaking in low huddles. A few had the grace to look ashamed of their curiosity. Jonna stood alone near the arch, bouquet on a chair, veil removed. She looked like a woman who had just met the version of herself the rest of us already knew. I walked to her. For a second, the crowd rediscovered its appetite for quiet. Josh, she said. My name suddenly not a weapon but a plea. I didn't, I know. I said, you didn't drive the truck. She flinched. I loved you, I said simply. That's not an accusation. It's a fact. I loved you for 7 years, and I built a life around that love. I ignored a lot of things because of it. I humiliated myself on the altar of it again and again, until humiliation felt like loyalty. Her eyes glossed. Don't do this. I'm not destroying you, I said. You're not a fortress I have to breach to get free. I am just walking out of a house we both know is on fire. She looked down at her empty finger. Reflexively, her thumb rubbed the space where a ring would have rested. He said we needed the optics for his father's fund, she whispered. We were weeks away from closing a deal, he said. Afterward, I could call you, meet you, explain. Explain that you married him but met me, I asked gently. She made a sound like a laugh had scrapped its knees. It sounds worse when you say it. It is worse, Sonia said, stepping to my side. She didn't say it to be cruel, she said it because we were past euphemisms. Janice's gaze cut to Sonia, then to me. You'll regret this, she said. Not a threat, but the brittle stubbornness of someone who has to believe the story where she still wins. You'll wake up one day and realize you chose someone who watches, who judges, who collects things. You'll miss me. I already missed the person I thought you were, I said. That's grief. It's not a signal to turn back. She inhaled like a novice swimmer sighting shore, then exhaled as if the shoreline had vanished. Goodbye, Janice, I said. It felt both too much and exactly enough. We left her there, a single bride with no groom, and 100 witnesses to a story that had the audacity to choose a different ending than hers. We didn't take a limousine. We didn't launch lanterns or throw rice. We found my sedan in the lot with a new wedge of sunlight warming the hood as if the day had decided to apologize for its first act. Sonia took off her heels and tucked her feet under her. Where to? She asked, eyes bright with exhaustion and something stronger. Home, I said. She smiled. Which one? The one with the brand new slippers, I said. We'll scuff them on purpose. At the apartment, she stepped out of her dress and into a knit sweater, skin still smelling faintly of roses and adrenaline. I hung my jacket over a chair we'd probably replace in a month when we realized it was more uncomfortable than it looked. We didn't speak for a while. Speaking would have turned all the moments into sentences too soon. When we finally ate the leftovers she'd insisted we pack despite the chaos, we sat on the floor with our backs against the couch and our knees touching. The soup had gone lukewarm. It tasted like relief anyway. Are you angry at me? She asked suddenly, staring into her bowl. For how I handled it. For the investigation. For the theater of it all. I tightened my fingers around her ankle gently. I'm grateful to you, I said. I'm grateful that while I was busy pretending to forget to protect myself, you remembered enough to protect the truth. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't know how to love you without fighting for you, she whispered. I still don't. I hope that's not a flaw you'll try to fall down. It's the flaw that saved me, I said. We slept early and badly, waking at strange intervals like new parents to a house full of unseen noses. At dawn, I dreamed of a row that curved without warning and woke to Serena's arm tight around my waist, as if the night had tried to roll me out of the bed and she had decided to be the guardrail. The days that followed were loud with the aftermath. Logan made bail and posted a long, slimy statement about misunderstandings, doctored content, and witch hunts. It took the internet less than an hour to scrub gaps in his timeline that were not gaps before. Investors issued statements about taking allegations seriously and reviewing commitments. His father's fund trotted out a PR firm that smelled like expensive bleach. Janice disappeared from public life. No apologies, no explanations, just silence, which might have been mercy or strategy. With Janice, the too often braided, Detective Grant called me in twice. Each time, she asked careful, relentless questions that made me realize how many things I hadn't thought to notice about my own life. She said the driver had confessed fully, pleaded for forgiveness, and named Logan early and often. She said the DA was building a case that would make the city's public interest meter hum with the smug electricity of justice that arrives on time. On the fourth day, a letter arrived with my name on it, in handwriting. I knew the way you know a scar. The way you know the sound a particular lie makes when it leaves someone's mouth. It was from Janice. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an attack. It was the map of a mind too proud to call what it had done what it had done. I folded it back up and tucked it into a drawer not because I thought I'd need it later, but because I wanted to prove to myself I no longer needed to carry everything in my hands. I didn't text Logan. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't be a rerun of an argument I'd been having with a younger version of myself who thought loyalty meant never saying, "This hurts." Work, my real work, the thing I did before love turned it into an afterthought. Waited. I returned to my studio, a cramped second-floor walk up above a bakery that exhaled cinnamon like a sermon. For hours each day, I disappeared into wood and metal, into building tables that held the weight they promised to hold. My hands remembered what my heart had forgotten, how to create something that did not betray me. Sonia taught her classes and prepped her cases and came home with a seriousness that never excluded laughter. She started buying groceries in small, thoughtful quantities, and made the fridge look like it belonged to people who lived in the same life. 2 yogurts, 2 apples, a wedge of cheese that asked to be eaten with our fingers. At night, we learned the ways our bodies used fear and tenderness to talk to each other. Sometimes, we argued about stupid things like lamp placement until we understood that we weren't arguing about lamps at all, but about where to put the light so that it wouldn't throw the wrong shadows. When we had been married exactly 1 month, Sonia came home with a paper bag and a wicked, delighted smile. "What?" I asked warily. She pulled out a cheap blue ribbon and looped it around my neck. "Congratulations," she said solemnly, "on surviving your first 30 days without pretending you're okay when you're not." I laughed until I nearly cried. Maybe I did cry. It was the good kind. On the news, Logan's trial crept closer. Commentators performed outrage and then fatigue. The city discovered 3 new scandals and forgot 2 old ones. I dreamed less and slept more. One Saturday, as some light pooled on the windowsill like someone had spilled gold then didn't bother to clean it, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Daniel Reyes, the driver, standing there with his cap in his hands and a woman behind him I assumed was his wife. He looked smaller without the fluorescent vest, just a man who had made a bad choice and then decided not to chain himself to it for the rest of his life. "Mr. Hale," he said, hat twisting, "I wanted to look you in the eye." I stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" He shook his head. "No, sir. I don't deserve your table. I just ... He swallowed. "I am sorry. It won't fix nothing." But I needed to say it where the air would hear me. I looked at his wife. She nodded once. A slow permission. "Thank you for telling the truth," I said. When it counted, he exhaled like he'd been holding the apology, a breath that might suffocate him. "I'll testify," he said. "I'll take what's coming. My boy, he needs to see that." We shook hands. The grip lasted a second longer than men are supposed to hold each other's hands. And then he laughed. "Are you okay?" Sonia asked from the kitchen when I came back, as if she'd asked me whether I preferred the spoon. "I think so," I said. "I think that helped." She kissed my temple. "There's that face." "What face?" "The one that says you're building something inside your ribs again." I smiled. "Stay for the inspection." "I live here," she said, and it landed like a vow we hadn't needed a ceremony for. Spring tipped into summer. The trial came and went with less theater than our wedding, which felt like an unfairness and a blessing. Logan pled to lesser charges when the messages, the money trail, and the driver's testimony braided tighter than he could wriggle loose from. He got time. Real time, the kind that re-narrates a man whether he likes it or not. He appealed. The appeal failed. The city yawned and turned to the next meal. Janice sent one more letter. I did not open it. I took it to the river with Sonia and we watched it darken and swell and ride the water away, not as an act of cruelty, but of mercy for both of us, the kind that finally lets a story stop insisting on its right to control every chapter. On our 6-month anniversary, I surprised Sonia with a ceremony in the alley behind the bakery. It was just the two of us and the bakery owner, who wore a paper hat and cried into the flour dust on his apron. We read the vows we had written that day out loud again. We ate pastries with our hands. We smudged sugar on each other's cheeks and didn't wipe it off because sometimes sweetness is allowed to be a little messy. What do you want our life to look like in 5 years? Sonia asked me later, lying on her back on our living room rug, her hair a dark river across the wall. I considered. I want a table that always has a clean spot ready for whoever needs to put something down. I said. I want to teach someone how to make something that holds. I want us to fight well and forgive fast. I want a door we can lock and windows we don't need to. She turned her face toward me. I want a dog, she said. A ridiculous one. Something that looks like it was designed by a committee. I laughed. We can do that. We can do all of it, she said. The city sighed and creaked and sang around us. Somewhere, a siren wailed. Somewhere else, a busker turned failure into a cover that made a couple dance on a corner like it was their idea to reinvent Joe. We fell asleep on the rug like that, and when we woke, it was because someone was knocking, softly, insistently. Like hope. I opened the door to find Mrs. Lois standing there, a bouquet of hydrangeas that had collapsed under their own weight dangling from her hand. May I? She asked. Sonia appeared behind me, and for a second, the old geometry tried to reassert itself. Triangles and rivals, the ugly math of scarcity. Then Sonia stepped back into the sigh, and in that small move she rewrote the equation. Of course, I said, letting Mrs. Lois in. She perched on the edge of our couch like a sparrow deciding whether the windowsill was safe. She looked older, which is to say she looked her own age without the scaffolding of a daughter's future propping her up. I came to tell you I'm sorry, she said. Not for what you think. I'm sorry for what I taught my daughter was acceptable to ask other people to carry. I thought of Janice at 17, fierce and brilliant and already fluent in the dangerous grammar of advantage. I thought of who taught her to conjugate. Thank you, I said. There was nothing else to say that wouldn't either romanticize or punish a history neither of us could edit. She stood. "Do well," she said, and walked back into a life that would now, I suspected, require more honesty than it had previously demanded. After she left, Sonia leaned into me, laughter rumbling quietly. "We are collecting quite the visitor log." "It's the hydrangeas," I said solemnly. "They know we won't judge their floppy little hearts." She kissed my shoulder. "Josh, we did it. We did," I said. "And then we did what people do when they are finally allowed to live inside the present tense. We bought the ridiculous dog. We painted the bedroom the wrong color and then the right one. We hosted dinners where the rule was that no one had to be brave. We learned the difference between revenge, which wants witnesses, and repair, which wants roots. On our first anniversary, we drove, slowly, along Crane Boulevard. We stopped at the florist. The owner recognized me, not from the news, but because I had once let her cut in front of me during a lunchtime rush, when she looked like she was holding the entire date together with the last inch of tape. "I heard you two made it," she said, smiling. "Congratulations." "Thank you," Sonia said. "We bought a simple bouquet, white peonies, silver eucalyptus, and we didn't talk about symbolism. We didn't need to. We took the flowers to the river and let a few petals go because I liked the way they moved on the water like little, stubborn ships." When we turned to leave, a couple about our age stood on the path, hands clasped but nervous in the way new things are when they are all so big. "Excuse me," the woman said, blushing. "Could you take our picture?" "Of course," Sonia said, taking the phone. They posed, awkward, in love, probably heading somewhere to promise things and then keep them, or else learn how to after failing once or twice. "Okay," Sonia said, framing them. "On 3. They grinned. 3. She said, and clicked. The image froze to people mid-laughter, mid-life, mid-choosing. She handed the phone back with a kind of smile that would be in someone else's memory for a long time. As we walked back to the car, Sonia laced our fingers together. "Do you ever think about the version of you that pretended to forget?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "What would you tell him now?" I looked at her, the woman who had watched me vanish into my own armor and then had the audacity to knock until I came out. "I'd tell him the only thing worth forgetting," I said, "is the story where love is a performance you have to endure to be chosen." She squeezed my hand. "Goat," she said. "Then we are almost out of those." We drove home with the windows down and the dog's ears flapping in the rearview like defective flags. The sky performed sunset with the shamelessness of a street magician. Somewhere, someone was throwing a wedding where everything went right, and somewhere else, someone was untangling the mess of a plan that had survived admirably long before truth finally had the good manners to arrive. We were not a lesson. We were not a cautionary tale. We were the boring miracle of people who had decided to treat each other like humans and then had repeated that decision until it became muscle memory. That night, we lay in the dark, can listen to the city invent lullabies out of traffic, can laughter and a neighbor practicing scales. "Josh," Serena said, voice barely above the breath of the fan. Who am I?" I smiled into the dark. The woman I didn't know I was allowed to love like this. She was quiet for a long, sweet minute. "And you?" "I'm the man who finally remembered everything worth remembering." She laughed. Then she turned and kissed me like a promise and like an apology and like an answer to a question I had been too afraid to ask for 7 years. Outside, a siren wailed. It kept going, because that's what sirens do. Inside, we slept anyway. We had earned it.